I believe we are live now. Mr. Chairman?
It's 6:15. Do we have everybody here? I don't see Ray Seals. I thought I saw him in the courtroom.
He is in the courtroom, yes, ma'am.
So it is September 15th, and this is the meeting of the Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee. We have Commissioners Goodrow, Leggett, Norton, Perkins, Seals, and Rice present. And the first item of business is the sheriff's report, page 91 of your packet. Has everyone had a chance to look at that report? Are there any questions? Any comments? I think we had 128 in the jail today. Okay, if there are no comments, I guess the report is accepted. And the next item is the employee handbook update, which is on page 91.
So,
Mr. Chairman, I've got Inspector Garcia here who can go over some of that with you and sort of tell you what you're looking at.
All right, I need to find it first.
115, I think, isn't it?
Also,
115, isn't it?
118 is where it was. The change
they said about 118 is when it sort of starts. Section F is the pertinent section. And for what it's worth, Mr. Chairman, that this doesn't really have a vote to associate with it. It'll be read into the minutes, but because this will be a multi-year thing, I thought it was a good thing for him to come here and sort of go through it and see what they're doing with the stipend funds we put into it.
This is the personnel human resources policy that has been amended.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
Inspector Garcia, if you would please talk to us about this, particularly the page 118, section F.
Hold
No.
on. Did it go completely off?
Oh, it didn't. You lucky.
I know, right?
Mr. Chairman, are you still there?
Yes.
Okay, let me, give me a second. We touched the button. All right, sounds like we're back.
I'm not gonna take.
All right.
Sorry about that. What we did was we added in the section dealing with the pay scale table and the step rate system that we had talked to during the original budget talks. We really do appreciate what the commission was able to do for us on that, because we were able to create a pay scale table. And right now it looks like we're going to have 5 entry-level ranks for deputies, for communications officers, for corrections officers in the jail, or all entry-level positions. So a person that hires in would hire in at a level 5 with the possibility of hiring in at a level 4 if they have 3 years of experience in that particular job field. When they hire in at that level 5 or that level 4, after a year, if they have at their anniversary date had satisfactory job performance and get a satisfactory evaluation, they will automatically be eligible for a step raise at that point. And every year until they reach level 1, which would be their top out level, they would be able to get a step raise as long as they get satisfactory performance evaluations. The actual pay table is on page
134.
134. So you can see how that kind of lays out and what we have done. So someone who we were at least able to do something that we talked about were some issues where we had supervisors who were being paid less than some of the folks that they were responsible for supervising. We've started to right the ship and get it going in the right direction as far as how the pay table will work. And obviously we said that this would be a multi-year plan, that we would continue to try to work at spacing these things out and get them to where we were finally at a true competitive level with some of the agencies that we have lost personnel to over the past few years. But we were able to have a great start to this and get it going. And we laid out basically what I explained there, the rules of how it would work as far as where people would hire in, how they would be able to advance, and how that structure works. So if you guys have any questions, I'll do my best to try to answer them for you.
Commissioner Leggett.
Yes, this is a general question, not just of Inspector Garcia, but he alluded to that sheet that has the actual pay on it. Do we need to incorporate that in this thing that we're going to pass? Because when we get pay raises, that's going to change. Good possibility, and hopefully it'll change every year. Do we need to put actual numbers in that slot? This is for the mayor or the chairman, or should we just recognize that we're going to have 5 different grades and then establish those at a time? That's my only question.
Mayor.
Yes, ma'am. With the sheriff, this is the sheriff's policy. So all he has to do once he wants to deviate from the county's policy is basically write it, have it vetted, and then submit it to the county commission to be read into the minutes. Commissioner Leggett's right that if you want to go past this year, now you've already got the stipend in it for this year. So this year is covered, but when we start moving past this year for this to be active, there's going to have to be a commitment that funding is there to go forward with it. And that's sort of what this meeting is tonight, basically, so to refresh, not refresh, but to let everybody see what's being proposed. Have some questions, maybe over the next couple of months, have some more questions on the actual pay raise and this pay scale, and then how much money per year that's going to require. At some point in time for this to be, to mean a lot for the officers and for Sheriff Riles, it's going to have multi-year commitments. So when he hires somebody in, they know 2, 3, 4 years down the road, if he wants to stay with Fayette County, that's what he can expect. And without the commission buying into it and voting that the funding would be there, there's not that assurance. So for tonight, it would just be information only.
All right, based on that, what's your recommendation, Mayor? Financially speaking, what's your recommendation? What do we do with the document we have now?
Like I said, the document you have right now is for information only. That's the sheriff's provided it, and we'll read it into the minutes at the county commission meeting. Basically present it, Ms. Sue will include it, so it'll be a part of the official record. Going forward, we're going to have this or some scenario like this to keep good people. And so that's what tonight is, basically, so that you can see the document. If you got some questions, call Sheriff Riles, Inspector Garcia, or whoever else you want to, and ask questions, so that when they come back and ask for a commitment for next few years, that you got those questions answered. But that shouldn't happen tonight.
Commissioner Goodrow.
Okay.
You mentioned something about a commitment. I thought that the commitment was already made when we put this in place, because that was brought up. You're not asking us to recommit every year, are you? Because this is my understanding from the very beginning. I brought it up that if this is what we do, and I championed it, that we had to have a commitment. Otherwise, you're not going to retain anybody if they never know. The point of this whole program was that they knew that they were going to get a raise the following year. That's what would keep people there. So is there a question about commitment at this point?
There's a question for some commitment. I think when we adopted the budget, we did go through this back and forth. At the time, you didn't have a document in front of you to sort of say, this is what the money is going to be used for, so that you could buy into it. There was a 2.5% stipend, for lack of a better word, provided this year. I don't know that there was ever a motion made to go past this year. I think there was to wait and see exactly what was provided. Now, I could be wrong on that. If it is, then y'all need to tell me and we can sort of get past what we're talking about now. But my understanding is that it was for this year, and we did not have a motion passed like we did with the ambulance system, where we adopted a pay scale and we are going to follow that for the next several years. So, I mean, is somebody, we did talk back and forth, I'm not denying that, but I don't know that we ever got to the point of saying, this is what we're going to do, and we'll commit ourselves for a 2%, 2.5% every year for the next 5 years.
Well, I, I think that there's going to have to be a point really soon that we commit to this pay scale, and we shouldn't have to recommit on an annual basis. Otherwise, the pay scale is really, if you don't commit on the front end, then what's the point in this pay scale if you've got to renegotiate a commitment every year?
Well, that's what I mentioned. I mean, tonight is basically to show you as committee, as commission and committee, how the sheriff's spending the funds. Takes 2.5%, and he's laid out a plan.
Okay.
Next month, the following month would be the time I would expect for the sheriff and Inspector Garcia and whoever else I need to just come and show you next year it's going to be this amount, because they now have a pay scale. They can sort of realistically say, this is going to cost you this much next year and the year after, provided that we keep the same people and they get the raises the next year and so on, so that you can say, yes, we're going to buy into it.
So, so we're going to have to, so within the next month,
2 months.
2 months, we're going to vote on the commitment.
That would be yeah, that's what I would like to see, because you really want to have this commitment done before we get into budget season in January on, because everything starts coming up, and it'd be a good thing to have this already put to bed before we get into that.
Yeah. Okay.
Commissioner Norton.
Yes, ma'am. I think what I'm more concerned about, and I agree with Commissioner Goodrow, is I was under the understanding, because I like to keep things simple, and I was under the understanding that the sheriff is going to set down some pay grades, and it looks like he's done it to 5 different grades in each bureau that he has. And we established we didn't establish a pay scale, but we authorized a pay scale not to exceed this much money for the year. Now, it was my understanding that those pay grades are wholly up to the sheriff at this point. And going forward, if there's a 2% cost of living allowance, that each pay grade would receive the 2.5% cost of living, the COLA. Now that was my understanding as we went forward. I agree with Commissioner Goodrow that it serves no purpose to have a pay scale if it goes away at the end of the year. And I was on board with this because I have lived a nightmare over there. There was no pay parity, and goodness only knows who was going to get what over there. And my hat is completely off to Inspector Garcia and the sheriff for putting this package together, putting together a form of pay scale so that each individual during recruitment time will know exactly what he's in for the long haul. This is a career decision here. This isn't a resume decision that we're making here for somebody. We want them to have a career here. And I fear that if they hear verbiage come from this county commission that, well, we're going to have to go back to the table next year and make sure that you still get it. That was not my understanding when this came about. I thought it was a done deal. And going forward, the numbers, I agree. I don't think the numbers ought to be presented in here. I think it's the pay scale. This pay scale is eligible for a bump in salary. that's up to the sheriff to decide what that pay scale is. But one person in that pay grade will make the exact same thing as the other person in that pay scale. And that's where I was going with my line of thinking when I was voting on this. And I thought I educated myself pretty well in that before I said yes. And somebody needs to change my mind that I'm wrong if that's the case.
I think you're right on, Mr. Chairman. I think what you're saying is correct. The part that I did not hear is that as people progress through their pay scales, get more experience, longevity, whatever the proper term is, so they go from a level whatever to a next level because of they've done a good job. That's going to have to be considered within the whole scheme of things. We have put 2.5% into it this year, and what I've asked Inspector Garcia, and I think Sheriff's working on, is some sort of what's next year is going to look like based on assuming you keep the same people here. And then the next year, assuming you keep the same people here. If that 2.5% works every year, that's the commitment the commission needs to do. If the sheriff comes back and says next year we can put this pay plan in place, and so we have a multi-year commitment from the commission, because every year you want the funding there. So that's the reason I'm asking that we go on record of saying for the next 4 or 5 years, whatever the commitment needs to be, so that the pay plan can be moving forward. That was not presented during budgets. We did talk about the back and forth and whatnot on how much it was to be, but no plan was put in place. And that's what you're seeing tonight. And he's showing you what's going to be read into the minutes, which will make it official in sheriff's policy. And then what I think needs to happen, because I don't remember a resolution or a motion. If there was, then like I said, I could be wrong, but if there hasn't been, the commission needs to go on record as saying, all right, you know, have a pay plan. We can run a spreadsheet out on how much it's going to cost us each year. And we're going to make a commitment for the next 4 or 5 years to fund it. And here's a good estimate of what it's going to cost us each year.
We need that on the agenda for next month or for November.
I would put it on next month just to keep the ball rolling. You may put it to bed next month, and the numbers can come back, may just be dead on to what everybody thinks.
Would you put that on the agenda, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
Please. Commissioner Leggett, do you have something else?
Yes, ma'am. I think we're on the right track, and I totally agree with Commissioner Norton. Of course, I work for Shelby County, and basically, once we get this in place and once we adopt this handbook, that there are different levels of deputies, there's different levels for sergeants and on up the line. Once that gets adopted and it gets funded, we're probably going to be in the minutia for the next 2 to 3 years, maybe 4, till we get the salaries up where they need to be anyway. But after that, then the separation's already there pay-wise. So when we do a 2% for county employees, then all sheriff's department people will get 2% added to wherever they are. I know that's the way it was in Shelby County, and it made it life a lot easier, because whatever the county commission gave, that's what we all got. If you were a sergeant, you got a little bit more than you did if you were a patrolman, because you got 2% of whatever your base pay was, depending on what grade you were. So, you know, I think that right now, what we're dealing with is trying to give a little extra every year to the sheriff to get those salaries up so he doesn't lose his people. And then once we get the salaries at a respectable level, then it's locked, and then they get whatever we give to all county employees. And I agree with Jim. I applaud Inspector Garcia and the sheriff. I am so happy that they took this ball and ran with it. And thank you to Commissioner Goodrow, and because he and I have worked in departments where there was separation, and you knew that if you stayed another year, you were going to move up to a level 2 or level 3 or whatever it was till you topped out. And then you got longevity pay after that. So, I mean, it's breaking new ground, and I hope the rest of the commission will go along with us, because our public safety people are so critical to this county having the reputation that it does of very low crime, and we got good services. And that's basically what I wanted to add.
Thank you, Commissioner Lake. All three of you who've spoken. Mayor, we don't have anything to vote on here tonight regarding this. All right. Is everyone ready? Anyone object to moving on to the next item on the agenda? All right, that's fire department discussion. And Mayor, would you like to speak, or where is Chief Hartsfield?
I'm right here, ma'am.
Okay. Which one of you would like to?
I'm going to let Chief Hartfield sort of go over this. He presented this, and sort of, I think this starts the discussion, so I'm going to let him sort of outline what his vision is.
The fire department 5-year plan, the mayor asked me to put together on the major needs of what we have coming up over the next 5 years. I've put down on the paperwork our shared revenue total and capital expenses and operating expenses I have on the fire department. The fire apparatus, the figure you see is our payment per year for the 2 apparatus. And as you can go across each year, you see it more or less doubling and tripling, because if we order the 2 each year, that will be the payment that year for those apparatus. This is going to be for the total of 10 apparatus over the 5-year period to replace all our 20-year-old engines and 3 tankers that are beyond age. The Fire Training Academy is what we're putting together now, is the funding for it. We are hoping to apply for a community grant that will take a lot of money off of the county and off of the city of Oakland to put into the training center. So, but this is the fee schedule, so we can spend as much as we can out of each year just getting it up and running. Once it's up and running, we will only figure maintenance fees from everybody involved training. The PPE is something that's OSHA mandated. We have to have. Last year we bought several sets. It's take us at least a couple of years to get everybody out of date turnouts, and the rest of the years are just going to keep funding for people coming into the fire department, because unlike a career department where you buy somebody a set of turnouts and they stay 10 years, they're on that one set of turnouts. But in volunteers, if I get somebody here and we get them a set of turnouts and they stay 2 years and go somewhere else, the next person that's coming in may not fit in those turnouts. So it makes it harder for us to be able to make sure everybody's fitted in OSHA mandated turnouts. The fire station remodel, I put on there, that first year, the 200,000, we have one station, Moscow station, Station 9, that is flooded, and we pulled everything out of it, and it's almost flooded again since the first time it flooded real big. So we're wanting to move that to another location. That's just something that me and Mayor has talked about, but nothing's set in stone. I've been looking at land, small 1-acre tract somewhere, but that's something that I wanted everybody to look at later on down the road. The operations expenses, the squad operations, the 35,000 is running the second squad. The rest of next year, starting January 1st, and then all the way across the board is the continued running 2 squads during the daytime 10-hour shifts. Operations chief, start the 25,000 is Chief Rice, part-time through December, and then full-time from that point on. We've had a big meeting with my district chiefs. Definitely need an ops chief. It helps run several things, and I can answer any questions about that. The other is current budget and the EMS stipend. that we talked about with Commissioner Seals.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
I have one, Commissioner Rock.
Chief, Commissioner Seals.
Chief, we talked about this at this meeting up here. I see this stipend in here for the EMS personnel, but we also talked about the volunteer firefighters, and I don't see that in here.
That is it, Commissioner. The EMS stipend is for the volunteer firefighters.
So you think this quote in here that you got will cover them?
Yes, sir. I mean, you know, it's a start to paying them back for the calls that they make on the EMS runs. You know, we pay for, right now, we pay for fire calls, but we don't pay for EMS. And they're
Yes.
still using their time and their gas and everything for EMS calls as well, which is making up about 80% of the calls.
But I think we asked for more money for the volunteer firefighters, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I mean, that's what was proposed for the stipend for the EMS since I've been putting it together.
Yeah, I know that is. That's the
Yes,
reason
sir.
I'm questioning this. Because we asked for the money for the volunteer firemen also.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir. That is for all 100% for the volunteer firefighters is the EMS stipend.
okay.
EMS stipend is an additional stipend for the EMS calls they go on?
Correct, sir.
Okay.
Chief,
So they'll continue to receive their stipend as a firefighter, and as well, they'll receive a second stipend for any EMS calls they make. Is that what I understand you to say?
Correct. Commissioner, right now they receive a stipend for all fire calls gone to. They do not receive anything for the EMS calls. Okay, and I don't want to put it into one stipend because the EMS calls will overload the fire calls and make it not worth much at all per person. I'm keeping
Okay, well-
EMS and fire separate.
Well, I would like to check with Commissioner Seals, because I agree with him. That's what I thought it was for, was to take care of the firefighters as well. You know, he was so eloquent in his presentation on how it is that they get up in the middle of the night, they answer the calls, they leave their jobs, they leave their families. Some of them leave their lives behind. I was really in hopes that we would see something, not just because not all your firefighters are EMS responders.
Commissioner
Yeah.
Norton, this is for all firefighters because you respond as an EMR, EMT, or whatever you are on the volunteer fire department. This is for all of those.
Okay, well, I could be wrong, but isn't there some districts that don't allow somebody that's not EMR rated to make the scene of a EMS call?
No, sir. Director Glenn Miller allows everybody, even if you're not EMR qualified, to make the scene of an EMS call.
Okay, well, I stand corrected there, but I yield to.
I would never single out somebody that's not qualified as to an EMR level, because there's instances where they may not be able to go to class for that long, and I'm not gonna punish them just because they can't get through the EMR class. This is for everybody on our department.
Chief,
Commissioner
I have,
Seals.
I have another question.
Yes, sir.
Chief, how many volunteer firefighters do you have in these departments now?
Total of about 117.
117?
Yes, sir.
I don't believe that this quote you got in here will cover those what we discussed giving them at the end of the year previously, do you?
No, sir, I don't. But you had mentioned at one time, Commissioner, about giving them all a set fee. And the reason I feel we can't do that is because you got some that may make one call a month, and you got some that's going to make 30 calls a month. And it wouldn't be fair to the guys that are really committed to making these calls to get the same as somebody else.
I understand that.
We do a stipend off of the amount of calls they make. That would determine how much money. Do I think that that's enough? No, sir, I don't. But I was trying to start somewhere to start getting them something that will pay them back for gas and some of their time.
I think we need to look into this a little further.
And this wasn't, this EMS stipend was in the squad operations was looking at January 1, was not for today.
Okay.
All right, does that need to be put on the agenda for next month also, Commissioner Seals?
I didn't understand you.
Do you want that on the agenda for next month
Yes.
so that we don't lose track of it? All right.
Madam Chairman,
Yes,
I have a question for the chief.
go ahead.
How much is budgeted for the stipend now?
For the fire stipend,
Yeah,
it's 52, I believe. 52.
52,000?
I'm sorry, that's the squad operations. It's 45,000 for the, right now for the fire stipend. 45,000.
So fire stipend is 45,000,
Yes, sir.
and we're looking to add another 55,000?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we're gonna double it.
Well, yes, sir, but we're going to keep it separate from the EMS because they make more EMS calls.
No, I totally understand.
Yes, sir.
Just
Yes.
want to make sure that everybody understands that the opportunity for everyone is to double, a little more than double their stipend if they went out and did the EMS calls, right?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Because the budget's
They
more.
got more money, a chance to get more money for making these calls. Yes, sir.
So total stipend has gone from 45,000 to 100. Your proposal is to go from 45,000 to 100 for both stipends total.
That is correct.
Okay.
Okay, Chief, that answered my question. I didn't see the other part of it. I just saw the 55,000.
No, so the other part's already in my current operating budget to pay them for the fire stipend.
All right, is there anything else on this topic?
Does that
I
change Commissioner Seals' request?
Yes, I didn't see I didn't see the paperwork I got didn't have the 45,000 in there. So it just had the 55. Okay. Yeah, that did change it.
Yeah.
Commissioner Leggett? Commissioner Leggett?
Yes, I guess this question is for the mayor. Mayor, does this push us closer to either a fire fee or some kind of a fee in order to meet our obligation to these people that are actually working? They call them volunteers, but they're working for the county and providing a service for our citizens. Where does that put us as far as funding all this to the mayor?
Yes, sir. You're pretty much right. We're going to have additional funding to put this in effect. Asked the chief last week to go back, and I told him where he could get his money from and to look at the expenses he was looking at. And I think he saw that the money wasn't there to do what he wants to right now. So there'll have to be additional revenue. Let me remind everybody that our fire department is funded from state shared funding that has already been shared with the cities. Currently, we don't use any property taxes to pay for the fire department. And the reason being is if we use property taxes or anything that had not been shared with the cities, basically a city resident paid into it, during the year, we would have to separate and pay a pro rata portion to that city based on those taxes. So we just take property taxes. Let's say roughly half the county is in the city and roughly half the county is not. Well, if we raise if we had to have 10 cents to make something work just on property tax, we'd have to raise it by 20 because 10 of it would have to go to the cities. Now, if you put a fire fee in or fire tax or something, I think you could structure those so that it would be outside the cities. Then that you wouldn't have to raise it except for what the amount of money you needed. But currently our funding is such that we don't have enough to make this happen right now.
Okay, well, that was, I know that many of the things that we've talked about tonight, the sheriff's money and fire department's money, we're gonna have to dig deep and scratch and look to find that. And I think we're gonna have to find some other funding sources. Thank you. That's all I had.
All right. Can we move on then to the Criminal Justice Center Master Plan Professional Services Contract? Please, Mayor, would you?
Yes, ma'am. Let me give you a little intro, and then I'll introduce the gentleman who I'd like to present the plan. You remember we went through the studies with CTAS and TCI on when we were getting close to maxing out on the number of folks here. Well, during that time, we were doing all sorts of things to trying to figure out where we would put them. And I think a couple of times we wanted to put something in the area. We didn't have a master plan of how we would structure anything around here. Well, as things worked out, our population has dropped quite a bit, but we still have a PREA problem with the federal government that when the pandemic's over with, I would expect to have some issues with somebody as far as what are we doing about it. Well, during that discussion, Sheriff Riles, myself, and a couple others thought a good idea would be to have some sort of plan, the bare basics taken care of. Mr. Pat Harcourt, who's on the video tonight, he's from A2H Engineering out of Memphis. He works with us in his capacity, our solid waste, our airport. So he's got a long track record with Fayette County. He's got a contract in your packet tonight to basically provide some of those basic documents that we would have to have, whether we did it tomorrow or whether we did it 10 years from now. It'd be things we had to have done, surveys, soil analysis, a plan of where we could put things. And if Pat's on and Pat's listening, I'm gonna let him turn it over to him and let him just sort of give a sort of synopsis of what this looks like and where we can go from there.
Okay, well, thanks, Mayor and Commissioners. So what we discussed was the PREA problem and the expansion of the call center dispatch, addition of a courtroom, a women's pod, all of these ideas were coming up out of that report that CTAS and then put together. And what we realized pretty quickly was we weren't sure how all that stuff would fit on your property and where it would go and how it would go. And there's not a document anywhere that shows all of your property tied together. So the first thing we included in the proposal would be to do a topographic survey, which is going to show the elevations of your sidewalks, parking lots, buildings, your land, how it lays out, all the utilities we can find out there, and just do a drawing of what your existing site looks like. And that'd be in a CAD system that you can use from here on out. And that's the first step to building things. And then the Jim Hart report mentioned a lot of other things. So if you add a pod, you know, a women's pod, for instance, let's say, what does that do to your kitchen area, your laundry area, and your control room areas? And so it brings up a lot of things. So the next step would be to, if we add these things, where would they physically fit on the property and how would it work? Manpower studies and all of that are all included in this. We'll take what Jim Hart did for y'all, and then we would take that and put that onto paper and say, okay, if you meet his requirements or his suggestions, here's what it would look like. Here's how it would fit. Here's your spacing between these pods and how you're going to meet the PREA condition you're not meeting right now. And so it gets into it's not really it's nothing you can go out and build a cell off of, but it's a schematic drawing with detailed information on it that says, okay, this pod can go right here. If you put it right here, your control tower's got to be here. It gives you enough room to add future pods in the future and here's where the courtroom can go, and you're getting tight on space out here. So here's what we got. If you need to buy property, or, I mean, the county owns a lot of property in that area, but your fenced off area and your property designated to the CJC right now is a footprint. Also, what is that going to do to your wastewater pumps out there? Those things are very on the edge right now. So if we increase capacity and people out there, then we have to look at your sewage system out there, maybe do some upgrades to those pumps and stuff. And they're at an age where they're probably going to need it before much longer anyway. But we'll look at all of those aspects and put it on paper so that you have a guideline that's easy to read and follow in the future. It's not committing to do any of those things right now. But what it will show, if you do have an issue with TCI and stuff, you say, look, we're doing this. This is the first step in a progress that you can drag this out and show progress and stay out of a ruling that's unfavorable to you. I think I cover everything. Skip, you may answer any questions you got.
Yeah, no, you did a good synopsis. What we're going to have this done, and for those of you who have gone through building the school or building the CJC initially, there was a lot of documents. If we had time and the documents initially, we may have done the same thing, but at least we would have thought a little bit longer and harder on some aspects of it. And that's just what we're trying to do now.
Commissioner Norton. Commissioner
Yes,
Norton.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I see in your scope of services here, you've got a schedule laid out for a principal, associate principal, project manager, that kind of stuff. Out of all these that I'm seeing, are any of them, or I guess a better question is, what participation of local and minority-owned businesses do you plan on using for these services?
Well, these services will be just architectural and engineering. There's not a bid document. We have everything in-house between us to do this. So we won't be going out to hire anybody else to do these services.
Okay, so you won't be hiring survey crews, and you won't be.
We have our own survey crew. We have everything. We have architects, engineers, everybody in-house. Now we are partnering with Spirit Architecture because we do all our jails with them, jail design. So we're bringing them in because they have a lot of specific jail planning aspects with them. So, but they're we between the two of us, we don't go to anybody else.
Okay, thank you, Chairman.
Did someone else have a question? Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Harcourt.
Perkins.
Tommy, go ahead.
Yes. Yeah. Is he still with us?
Yes.
Yes.
Sir, as this thing goes through the motions now, are you and your people, are y'all gonna pay attention and take care of us on the state and federal regulations and things of that nature as we go into the construction and the planning for this?
Well, if we go into that next step, certainly. And I think Sheriff Riles is not on, but I mean, he's called me several times, and I didn't design anything out there right now, but we've been there every time there's been an issue with things to help him out and stuff like that. But yes, going forward, if you decide to build something, we would design it and we would make sure that all the state, local, and federal regulations are met to go with that. But this plan doesn't address that right now. It just says, can I physically, how many beds can I add to this area right here and still meet the spacing requirements and the PREA, which is, you in a women's dorm, you got this PREA that they can't be visible from anybody else. So we look at all the regulations and we say, per the state regulations, you can do this. This will fit right here, or it will fit over here. and we'll give you, we'll involve everybody in it, like the sheriff's office. They'll be part of this charrette that we'll do and talk about all these options. We'll zero in on a plan for you that's actually a workable plan.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, this is one phase. This is one project. This does not lead into a building, whereas Pat's done a lot of good work for us, and I would expect he'd probably get the job based on our experience with him. But this is not that contract. So when we get to that stage and we get to doing something that we'll cross that bridge then, but this is not in this document here.
Mayor, is there anything that we need to vote on related to this?
Yes, ma'am. This is a contract. It has a dollar figure in it of a little short of 31,000. And I'm not sure, I'd have to go back and look on a timeline on it, but I think there's a date to have it completed by, probably within 6 months, 9 months, something of that nature.
Commissioner Norton.
That we do need to vote on this, move it on to budget.
All right, could I get a motion on this?
Commissioner Norton. Commissioner Norton so moves.
All right, is there a second?
Goodrow.
I'll second it, Leggett.
Seconded by Commissioner Leggett, and we'll have a roll call vote. Commissioner Goodrow,
Aye.
Commissioner Leggett,
Aye.
Commissioner Norton,
Aye.
Commissioner Perkins,
Aye.
Commissioner Seals,
Aye.
and I also vote aye. So that motion passes, and that contract is will be recommended to the Budget Committee.
I have one question, Mr. Chairman.
We're running.
Who's going to pay for it? Does it come out of the county's budget, or does it come out of the sheriff's budget, or how are we going to do that?
It's going to come out of the county's budget. And if I can figure out a way to put it on a COVID budget, I'm going to do that.
Okay, good.
All right. Now, there's one last item, and we're running over on our time into the next committee. Sheriff's Office salary line adjustments per pay table, page 143.
Yes, ma'am.
What is needed there?
That's nothing more than taking the 2.5% and placing in the correct line items so that you can implement the sheriff's policy. It's no new money. It's just taking money from one line item and putting it in the correct place.
All right. Is there a motion?
So moved, Norton.
Second, Goodrow.
All right. Commissioner Norton made the motion, and Commissioner Goodrow seconded. Commissioner Goodrow, do you vote aye or no?
Aye.
All right. Commissioner Leggett,
Aye.
Commissioner Norton,
Aye.
Commissioner Perkins,
Aye.
Commissioner Seals,
Aye.
and Rice also aye. So that also will be recommended to the Budget Committee. Is there any other business? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So
Perkins
moved.
makes a motion to adjourn.
Thank you so much. It's good to see everybody.
Aye.